Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And we're going to have a great night with my co-host, David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers. Thank you for coming and being with me tonight.
Greetings and blessings and welcome, everybody. We always greet you with the love and the honor of the infinite creator. And of course, we always pray that you will accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings from the creator. And got a good story tonight. Coyote or the prairie dog, wolf.
Gotta love that. One or the other. Oh.
Is it a dog or a wolf? It's a wolf.
Yeah, it's a wolf. Anyway, getting into that, why is this computer doing this? It always does this funky thing. There we go. You got to get that happy medium in it, or the background doesn't show up so good. Anyway, I'm going to be talking about the Illinois Indians tonight. Anyway, Midwest. How many of you live in the Midwest? There you go. Well, Plains Indians on the eastern side of the Mississippi River. If you all don't know that. Kitty says hello. Hey, Hawkeye. There you go. There's Nina and the Mystics in the house. Remember, everybody, don't forget to get your Milky Way Soul Tribe shirts with my face on them right here. You can get them in a nice little package like this. And there you go. And it says Milky Way Soul Tribe on it. And there you go. And they're like $20. Get on that. It ends at the end of the month. So get yours. They got hoodies, mugs, all kinds of cool merch on Nina's store for the Milky Way Soul Tribe. And I want to shout out to her because, you know, I didn't have time. I'm a busy guy. I didn't have time to make merch and put it up. So Nina did the work. And I appreciate her very much for doing that. So go out, support the Soul Tribe. She's also got new merch for the Nina the Mystic Truther with a cool logo. And, of course, the All Steady and Going Ana Karana, which you can get stickers. She sells them in a different spot, and you can get stickers, a whole bunch of kind of things. And you can get hats and mugs and, you know, maybe not this hat, but there's all kinds of stuff on there with the Ana Karana. And go pick yours up. But most of all, ending at the end of the month, Milky Way Soul Tribe. And you too can wear me on your chest. So check that out. That's my little spiel. Thank you, everybody. Just support the Milky Way Soul Tribe. I appreciate it. And to everyone, thank you. Thank you so much. We got
and support Nina too.
Yes, support Nina too. Yes, exactly. Let's see here. There you go. Streamlabs. There you go. Nina's merch, Streamlabs. Check it out. She's got stickers. Max Vision's in the house. Hello, Max. Annie Allen's in the house. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Kitty, nice seeing you tonight. Lucky Stone. Where are you? Lucky Stone's in the house tonight, too. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Yep, it's Tuesday, and it's Native American Myths and Legends, and I've talked way too much about merch and stuff, but don't forget to go get yours because I got mine. I'm wearing my shirt. Look at that. I'm going to have it for years to come. It'll be a collector's item. And there's Elderberry. Elderberry, thank you. Hero, everyone. There you go.
Retro.
Rotro. Gotta love it. Anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about the Illinois Indians, those Indians in the Midwest. Oh, where did I put that? Tonight. Anyway, I had it up. You know, computers are always just finicky. That's all I can say. Computers are finicky. And when you're trying to find something and you can't find it. So here we go. Present. Share screen, because you know we're on a show where we can show the screen, so we're going to do that. And there we go. The Great Plains. This is a map of the United States of where the Indians would have been located. The first American locations of major Indian groups and culture areas in the 1600s. We're taking a trip way back in time, people. Way back. Anyhow, and you can see that we're going to be talking about the Menominee, Sauk, Fox, Winnebago, the Illinois, Miami. We kind of touched the Potawatomi. They were kind of in between the Plains and the Woodland Indians and the Shawnee, which we talked about the other night. So if you missed all that, go back and check out last week's show where we talked about the. Okay, and this here is a little bit bigger map we can see, and here's the Illinois, Cahokia, yeah, the Missouri River. See, and the reason is remember, the rivers are nature's highways. So you got the big interstate of the Mississippi River, and you got the Missouri River, the Ohio River, which goes way up into the Ohio Valley. And remember, these Indians up here could trade with those Indians down there because they have a river. That's their highway to travel on. Of course, it was a lot of others' highways too. Okay, so we have, this was the North, was the Great Alliance known as the Iroquois Confederacy. And we studied them a few weeks ago. And that was up here by New York, Pennsylvania, up into Canada, New Hampshire, Maine, all of that area, Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey. That was the tribes of the Iroquois. And they spread out. But far to the southwest was the Puebloan people. And we can go back to this last slide. The Pueblo people, they lived in the southwest. But to the southeast of them, we have the great nations of the Cherokee. Which had a rich and complex clan system. We're going to be talking about them in a few weeks. Family lines were usually traced through their mothers and grandmothers. Shamans were the people who stood as a bridge between human world and the spirit world, because until the missionaries and the priests and the Jesuits came to the Americas, the shamans were the powerful people who gave spiritual guidance to these people who believed in nature. They believed in to honor their spirits and all living things, to preserve Grandmother Earth, which is kind of a good thing. I think we've forgotten about that. Truth Seeker 2 is in the house. Hello.
And if I may interject, to learn how to honor the ancestors, which we do not do anymore.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. Definitely for sure. Okay, most of these tribes, if not all of them, they use the use of a drum, not only for music, but to give their prayers wings, to send them up on the drum beats to their ancestors. These people also used their art was woven into baskets and painted onto hides. They had powwows to bring life to ancestral ways. Art was their language. That was beyond words, and they crafted rich meanings into that art, which we still have today. And they dig it up and they preserve it and they put it in museums. And we've lost touch with society to the point where we don't know what it means anymore, but it's still preserved there. These people lived a fairly simple life. We think it wasn't much, but they were skilled craftsmen. They were farmers, and they had good land to farm on, especially in Illinois. That area was a great basin along the rivers, was fertile farmland for miles and miles. And these people lived simply and farmed. They were skilled craftsmen and traders. They had rice fields, which, we think, they didn't have that stuff, but they used irrigation systems. They used dugout canoes and birch bark canoes to travel those river system highways all over the country and trade.
What, they weren't hunter gatherers?
Yeah, that's the thing. They were this ancient hunter-gatherer, but they had different traditions. As you can see from this picture, they're beating the drums. They're doing this ancestral dance. They're like I said, they are doing the powwow to bring life back to their ancestral ways.
Can I mention something?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's not really that easy to build a drum. I have built drums before. I trained with a woman up in North Carolina, and that takes a certain kind of skill and knowledge. And I often wonder who taught the natives how to make a drum, even though it looks simple, But anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see who. Anyway, commentators in the house. Hello. Good to see you. Good to see you. Pearl Jones. Hello, everyone, she says. There you go.
Hey, Miss Pearl.
Thank you both for coming tonight. Nina says, enjoy the show, everyone. Check out Milky Way merch in the store. Now we have stickers, tumblers, and a bound notebook. Oh, boy. Okay, good deal. Thank you, Nina. Saturian Son's in the house. Thank you. Thank you. Elderberry says, that's how Pipestone, we were there. There was none. They traded. Oh, yeah. See, that's right. They found things they could trade with other nations, like, Knife River was where they got the stone to make knives and spearheads and pipestone. And we take these people as they were savages and they were native. They barely knew how to walk and talk and communicate. They wore feathers on their heads and, danced around, and they didn't believe in a god or nothing like that. But they were way more than that. We just misunderstood them, because the people that met up with these people just seemed that it was savagery. And because of that, they just got labeled. And, you can't speak the language. You don't believe in our religion. Well, we don't need you. You know what I'm saying?
Let me interject here. Everybody talks about, the savages, but I dare you to go out in the wild and find a rock and make an arrowhead. I dare you.
Absolutely.
Because those savages were a lot more smarter than we ever give them credit. You got to find the right rock, you got to find the right tools, and you got to have the knowledge to be able to knap a knife or blade or anything out of flint or obsidian. But to the point, though, so, they weren't dumb at all.
Yep. No, they weren't. But we took it as, oh, my gosh, you're Stone Age men using sticks and rocks yet. You see what I mean? And they just didn't need that technology because there was no reason to have it. Why would they need a car when, they had strong legs and could run for miles? Why would you need to grow, fence off an area and have cattle when you got thousands of buffalo roaming the plains? Why would you need to make clothes when you got hides of all these animals that are running around just right in front of you? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And Elderberry says it takes a lot of practice too. So it's one of those skilled things that they pass down. Man, but we just take these people for granted, and they were more than that. And so we're going to go to the mountain builders of Cahokia. Way back in the day, we're taking a time capsule here. So join me on this trip. This is Monk's Mound. It's a historic site a few miles west of Collinsville, Illinois. In its heyday, Cahokia was larger than London, England, covering about 6 square miles with 120 man-made earthen mounds in a wide range of sizes, shapes, and functions. The Mississippians who lived there were accomplished builders who erected a wide variety of structures, from practical homes to monumental public buildings. Cahokia, as it is now defined, was settled around 600 AD. The inhabitants left no written records beyond symbols on pottery, shell, copper, wood, and stone. The city's original name is really unknown. So, from taking a bit of this, Illinois is pretty darn flat, and you make a mountain here. Who made this mountain? You didn't have a bulldozer. You didn't have horses. And doing it 600 AD, these people really knew or were really hard workers or something. And I don't even know how they know it was 600 AD when all they left behind was some pottery, shells, copper, and wood, and stones. I mean, how do you do that? Build a skyscraper, when all you got is a little bit of that. These mounds were named. How did they get their name? After the Cahokia tribe, a historic Inuit people living in the area when the first French explorers arrived in the 17th century. As this was centuries after Cahokia was abandoned by its original inhabitants. Cahokia tribe was not necessarily descended from the original founders. At the high point of its development, Cahokia was the largest urban center north of Mexico between 1050 and 11 AD. Cahokia's population increased between 1,400 and 2,800 people to between 10,000 and 15,000 people. Archaeologists estimate the city's population at its peak was between 6,000 and 40,000, and more people living in outlying farming villages and that supplied the main urban center. Okay, I got a question for you. Now, say this is true, and you have a population between 10, 15,000, or 6 and 40,000, which they're guesstimating. But they're just to say let's say there's 20,000 people to be safe. Just out of heads up, right? Okay, now listen to what I got to say. 20,000 people, and you got a city, so it means you got to bring in food, and you're not, you got to have quite the farming area. You got to have, these people ain't going to eat corn all day either. Who's going out and hunting? How many buffalo would you take to support 20,000 people a day?
A bunch.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be out there. Yeah, you'd have to be out there either killing, hundreds of deer a day, hundreds of buffalo a day to support that kind of population. You would have to, what kind of a farm would you have to support 20,000 people a year?
A big one.
Yeah, exactly. And then they wonder, well, but these were hunter-gatherer people. They were living in grass huts, moving around. People just once in a while brought in a rabbit or something to the 20,000 people and said, hey, here we are. We got a rabbit. This will divide it up like 42 ways, Or
could you imagine 20,000 people chasing one rabbit?
Yeah, but you see the illogical business of this. So my question is what happened then? Did the buffalo run out? Did they hunt the deer till almost extinction? And because if that's the case, and you're not raising deer, you're not raising buffalo in a captivated area, and literally farming them. That's in cultivating and growing the crops and harvesting. You would, in order to save that much corn or food, you would have to have huge storehouses of this food for a year's storage. You know what I'm saying?
And where did they build them, and how did they build them? The storage units. How did they keep the corn? How did they, Yeah,
I mean, we talk about the tribes, and they had a big bunch of corn, and they put, whatever, they put in some sacks and but their tribe was, maybe 100, 200 people or whatever, and they grew enough corn to support themselves. But now you're talking 20,000 people, and they're living in the city, and they're not counting the outlying farms, and the people out there. So I think we've been misled. That's all I can say.
Well, here's something. I've mentioned it, we have mentioned it several times over the years. And yes, this is our 140th show. But the native folks never killed all of the animals. They never picked all of the fruit. They never picked all of the vegetables. They always left something uh, in honor of Mother Earth. And also, if there were 10 squash, they'd leave one for the seeds.
Yep.
And so, so this idea, but I find it hard to believe that these folks who knew how to make, how to knap flint were so stupid that they didn't learn how to manage their herds.
Yeah. Oh, that's exactly it. Because
they had herds of deer, and they only killed what was necessary. And so it's like just like we do now. They never killed everything in their area. They always made sure there was wildlife left over. And so, but anyway, I think they learned how to manage the local herds of rabbits, of deer, of all the wildlife. They knew better.
They had to. I mean, if they learned how
to, they had to.
Yeah, because that's why the natives that we know the best are the hunter gatherers. They moved around a lot because the game would run short. They packed up and they just moved. They grew their crops 1 year or 2 or 3, and then the soil got bad. They just moved to another site, let the crops return, the soil return. But because there wasn't many of them, so but we're talking 20,000. Most of these tribes that they talked about when the white man came were maybe 1,000 at the most, maybe a couple thousand, but nothing like this. So it just tells you that the farther you go back, the people must have been way more advanced. It's just logic.
And not only that, are the archaeologists stretching the numbers?
I don't know. I really don't know.
How do they know it's 20,000 people? But the thing is as we're discussing, how do you feed 20,000 people? They might have lived there, but how do you feed them on a daily basis? They'd be eating each other.
Yeah. No, I agree. But that's the whole point. Even if how few people do you have to have in the city in order to run out of food? I mean, you got a tribe of 1,000 people. How far can your hunters go before they I've been traveling 3 days and I got 2 deer. Now I got to travel 3 days back to feed everybody. Well, you're putting a lot of work and effort in to get a deer, and then walk 3 days travel because you killed all the deer that were within 1 mile, and then you move 2 miles, and then 3, and then 5, and then 10, and pretty soon you're way out there. You're hunting, and pretty soon the deer are gone. There is no deer to hunt.
Necessity deems that you manage the herds.
Yes.
I mean, it's just like they'd be sitting around the fire going, we can't keep killing them all here. We won't have any left.
Well,
I mean, even cavemen were that smart, Yeah.
And that's the thing. So let's read on here a little bit, and it talks about the food. One of the major problems Cahokia faced was keeping a steady supply of food. A related problem was the waste disposal. I never thought about waste. For the dense population. Population of Cahokia began to decline during the 13th century, and the site was eventually abandoned around 1300. Scholars suggest overhunting, deforestation, and flooding as an explanation for abandonment. Well, I could see why. Just what we talked about. You make a city, you hunt all the buffalo, you hunt all the deer. Pretty soon your people are, going out miles. And then, of course, the waste. The pile. Can you imagine the piles of bones you would have from all of those buffalo you were killing, or all those deer? These people are hungry,
But let's add another gross thing to this.
Yeah.
There are 20,000 people pooping every day.
Yeah. And they're not putting in little bags and waiting for the garbage man to show up.
There is no sewer system, there is, and here's something, in looking back, there's no evidence that they had latrines. In other words, a dug trench that, white folks made, and so that you could hang your fanny over, and then after the trench got full, they would cover it over and dig another trench. So, but there's no evidence that I have seen over the years of where did they go poop?
It's a good question. And you know what? I'll solve the whole problem. They didn't poop. They're Indians. They used, just like they did with the buffalo and the deer and all that. They used every bit of the bone and everything, and then when they ate so well and so good that they didn't poop, but maybe once a month. There you go. Oh, I'm funny enough. But
and I always wondered, if you were in the middle of a battle and had to go, what did you do? Did you go over to the side and, never mind?
Yeah. Well, that's okay. Let's okay, here we go. Deforestation, yes, because
wait, let me, and that's the other one. Deforestation. Why would native peoples who didn't have axes, really, they had stone axes and, basically, deforestation. I'm sorry, native folks didn't deforest. They didn't. They took small trees that they could handle and move and carry. It was the white people that deforested areas. So until the white man came over there, the idea of deforestation was not an issue with the native peoples. They saw no need in chopping all the trees down. You read that story last week about the native who came over and got the husband and wife and said, move over here. This is better land. You're chopping down trees. You're wasting your energy. Come over here and farm. And they moved his house, but so this idea, the native folk did not see clear cutting. So this idea of deforestation to me is BS by the white people because they do it.
Yeah. Well, I got something to bring up with that. Okay. See, this is why I think something happened. I keep saying this over and over and over. I think something happened along the way. I think these people were smarter. They must have had some kind of tools more than, just some pieces of stone or something. I just have a hard time believing all of that. But here's the thing. They still have to burn. You can't, they're not cooking with gas or electric. You have to have sticks and twigs to burn, to light your fire, to cook your food every single day. And sooner or later, all those little twigs are going to be with 20,000 people. 10,000 of them are the wives, and they're all cooking dinner at the same time. And they all need a fire. And all those twigs, after a couple, 200-300 years, they're all going to be picked up. You know what I'm saying? And then you got to keep moving farther and farther and farther out to get some more twigs and branches. And then you're going to build your houses. You're going to build your grass huts in your houses and things like that. And you're going to need timber for that. I mean, you're talking 20,000, earthen homes or whatever. And as well as I do, after 20 or 30 years, that wood gives out, and you got to get more wood to build a new house. What do you say to that?
Oh, I agree with that. But it's still, chopping down a tree is difficult. I've done it. I went back to the old ways back in the day. I've got 2 or 3 different kinds of axes and a big crosscut saw. Chopping down wood ain't easy. Now, I agree with you. You have to collect things, but that's when they also started learning how to make charcoal. And that's also when they started learning how to cook better, meaning more efficiently rather than having great big, roaring fires. And so Huh?
I agree with that, but in order to make charcoal, you have to burn wood.
Oh, I understand, but I mean that this idea that that there was just 10,000 people just chopping down trees. Just I think it was more than that. But I agree with you that something else happened.
Well, and that's the thing. So I'm talking. Okay, we got 20,000 people live in this place, and if it was only for like 20, 30 years, I would say okay. But they're talking hundreds of years, and in hundreds of years, you're going to go out to that backyard, and you're going to go, wow, that tree fell down. And every time a tree grows up, well, I got to get the branches off, and then I got to go farther and farther and farther. Mom wants some wood to cook supper tonight. You know what I'm saying? So
yep.
Something's going on. Xavier's smart. He says not too long ago, 600 years or so, there was many trees the size of redwoods, even bigger, and used to live in them, with houses as well as their tools. And I agree with that, because we did a show about the trees in Ohio and along the coast and stuff that were so big, when people arrived, they would literally live in them as a house. The trunk would be rotten or whatever, and it was empty, and they could bring their cows and their people right in there, and you got an instant house. The trees were so big. Anyway, okay, good for you. Thanks, Xavier. Let's go on.
In the state of Georgia, when they came here and found all of the tall pine trees, the Georgia became one of the biggest places for a mast and for keels on sailing ships.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
because think about those old sailing ships with those big riggings. They needed a tall, straight tree, and a lot of them were that Georgia pine.
Yes, no, I agree. And then the white man came here. They built massive ships, and they used all this wood and oak and whatever, and they just used up the resources without replanting. And they were like, oh, cool, we can chop all these trees down, and in a few years we can plant that as crop land. They didn't think about any of that stuff. Anyway, Chloe's in the house.
And also to that point, I keep interrupting, but the longleaf yellow pine is an endangered species of trees, and I am very happy to have a couple that they're 200 years old trees on my property down on the river. So I'm thankful that there are still trees like that. But these things are huge. Couldn't live in one. Three people can't put their arms around it.
I'm still waiting for you to send me a few of those seeds so I can grow my own yellow pine out here.
I know. I got to get the pine cones.
Yeah, go get some pine cones. Send me a few seeds. I want to grow my own yellow pine out here. We'll help it not being endangered anymore. Anyway, okay, let me finish this up. They abandoned in 1300 scholars. That's how they say scholars, making you think smart. Suggesting overhunting, deforestation, and flooding as an explanation for abandonment. Another possibility is invasion by outside peoples. What outside peoples? Analysts of sediment from beneath nearby Horseshoe Lake reveal that 2 major floods occurred during the Cahokia period, roughly 1100 to 1260 and 1340 to 1460. And I could see them leaving during a flood because, hey, we got flooded out, we got to go. But, you'd think that culture, if you're living in a big city, with 20,000 people, would you just break up into little clans and start living in the forest in a little grass hut kind of thing? No.
I think it would be more of a trickle effect.
Maybe.
Folks just started trickling away because there wasn't enough food, and so I think it might have been a trickle effect.
It could be.
But also, I mentioned this to you last week, I think, the other day, just in passing, but I was doing some research and came across some information that in North Georgia, in the Chattahoochee Mountains, and I know the area, haven't been there in a few years, but that there are traces of Mayan civilization in North Georgia, and also the mounds in Macon, Georgia, which we sort of briefly covered at one point earlier, and that the reason that the Mayan disappeared was that they moved north and went through Georgia. Now that's okay, but here's the thing: if they moved north and there's, the mounds and so forth, there's proof here in Georgia, then they didn't just come to Georgia. They moved north, and where would they have gone? Up the river.
Up the river.
And
yep.
so could they have gone upriver? Easily, because the locals were doing it. So why so to the point of who would have come to try to kill them, conquer them, or otherwise take over, could have been the Mayan. Where they at? And remnants of the Aztec.
Could be. Like to see the DNA testing on that.
And one other thing, I'm sorry, Robert, but there's also, they've been trying to get rid of the proof for years that actually the Egyptians made it up the Mississippi River.
Yep. Okay. F. Kitty says disease follows flood and death. Of course, comes afterwards. And she's totally right. When you have floods, it stirs up all that poop. You could get diseases from it, killing people off by the tons. But you'd think they would have found some kind of evidence of that. Okay, let's go to Monk's Mound. This is the largest structure in Cahokia. It is a massive platform mound, 4 traces, 10 stories tall, facing south. It is 100 feet high and 951 feet long, 836 feet wide. It covers 13.8 acres and was built over the course of several centuries. Excavation on top of Monk's Mound has revealed evidence of a large building, like a temple or residence of the chief. Now, could this be those Mayans that you were talking about who were from the south? They came here and they couldn't build stone structures, so they built a giant mound with one building on top. Could that have been?
Sure. I mean, why not? I mean, a lot of things are based upon local building materials. And so if they were used to building with limestone and such down in Mexico, you come up here and you go, what am I going to build with?
Yeah.
So
we don't have that, but we have lots of dirt.
Yep.
Built a giant mound. Let's see.
And also, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. But also, what would prompt the natives in North America to all of a sudden build a mound, whereas the Mayan and the Aztec that moved north, they'd already built mounds or temples and great big huge things. So they brought that thought with them, and because they didn't have any rocks, they built it with dirt. But so my question is, why the Cherokee didn't find it necessary to build a big mound, but if the Mayans moved north, they would have brought that with them.
Yep. F. Kitty says this would be the excavation. They started finding mass female sacrifices, which indicates some serious troubles. Let's see. Xavier says Mayan are Asians, Aztec are native, Egyptians are native from the other continent. Good observation. Okay, let's skip ahead here. Okay, so Monk's Mound is this large structure. We went through that. The mound was named after La Trappe, another French monks who resided there for a short time around 1809. The monks came from a province of Perche in France, numbering all about 80 in all. They lived upon the mound, which was the gift of Colonel Nicholas Jarrett of Cahokia. Now, isn't that really weird? This is why I brought this whole thing up. Isn't that really weird that the monks of all people would build and live on the top of a temple that was created by another culture?
Yeah, but they've been doing it for millennia in Europe.
I know that, but I'm just saying.
Right, I agree with you. Why would they pick that spot?
Yeah, and why would it be monks? Why wouldn't it be somebody else? You know what I'm saying? Why not build your Capitol building there? But the monks, they farmed, repaired watches, and traded with local inhabitants. In 1811, the monks used the lower terrace for a kitchen and garden, and they had a summit of the structure sown with wheat. The monks were not allowed to speak to another except in cases of absolute necessity. They ate 2 meals a day, which excluding all meat. They slept in their clothing upon boards with blocks of wood for pillows. When a stranger visited, he was welcomed with the utmost kindness. The monks did not do well in the climate in the area. Malaria fevers prevailed among them to an alarming rate. Those who died were buried without a coffin in the field adjoining the residence. Between 1813 and 1816, they sold off the personal property, returned to the land to Mr. Jared, and left the country for France. In 1907, John Sutter, an archaeologist, found glass beads which had been made in Italy 250 years before the birth of Christ. So, does that not tell you that somebody was trading with these natives? 250, unless these monks brought off of some beads and brought them there and dropped them. Where did they get these beads that were 250? That'd be 2,000 years old. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and how did they get there?
That's a good question. Very good.
They didn't fly in by balloon, maybe, but they could have flew in with a saucer, but it was probably because of boats and naval activity of some type. Yep. So the more that there are things uncovered by what folks call pseudoscientists like me, who study something and research something, and you find anomalies that, like, wait a minute, that just don't make sense. But when you try to put those weird anomalies up against what the archaeologists are trying to shove down our throat, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So they're leaving out stuff. They're covering up things. And in the academia of archaeologists, you can't draw out of the line. You got to stay inside the lines when you color.
Yes. And the more we know, the more questions it raises. Let me finish this up. Later, a man by the name of Hill owned the mound and a large portion of the land adjoining it. He was an enterprising settler and added to the structure the Latrap monks had lived in and made it a comfortable residence. Beneath his home was a deep, unwalled cellar, and on the second terrace, Hill dug a well 80 to 90 feet deep. Old settlers living when the well was dug stated that at the depth of about 60 feet, pieces of pottery and 2 seashells were found. Those who partook of the well water stated it had a peculiar taste. Interesting. Could it have been dead bodies? We don't know. But that's for another day. Anyway, see, I got pictures here. I got a lot. This is a story of the Illinois people. They lived there in their traditional homeland in a place the French used to call Illinois country. This story is a story based on historical descriptions of Illinois by French observers like Jacques Marquette and Pierre Delente, who traveled or lived among them for 300 years ago. So yeah, we talked about these French guys. They were the first to come down that way. It was all about trapping, and then Jesuits and stuff like that. But we're gonna skip over to this.
Can I raise my hand a second?
Go ahead.
They talk about the French trappers, but nobody talks about how the French trappers got there.
Well, I can tell you how they got there. Well,
no, but I mean, they always talk about the French trappers, but how did the French trappers get to America?
Oh yeah, well
It's not how they traveled when they got here. It's the English and the Spanish.
Yep.
But the French were coming here and dropping off priests.
This is true.
They don't talk about the French coming over. They don't talk about French colonists. They don't talk about French boats or captains. You know what I mean? Just think about that. Well, all the stuff we talked about has been, Portuguese and Spanish and English and Vikings. But there's all these French trappers.
Yep. Yeah.
Stop thinking about that.
Xavier says, after the flood, the Asians of Hawaii landed in Japan as well as California. Natives emerged from Arizona and also landed in Northern Europe. There you go. Good deal. Yeah. Hello, Mary Wins. Hey, good to see you.
The ancient stories talk about the land of Mu, which was in the Pacific, and that when it sank, because of the catastrophes, people moved left and east and west. So, but they came from the land of Mu.
Yep, they did, and just like the people in Atlantis were in the Atlantic, and they moved, to the northern shores and to the Africa to, Egypt. Anyway.
To put it simply, they moved to dry land.
Yes. Okay. So we'll finish this up a little bit here. We got this. We're going to do an Indian Creek massacre on May 21st, 1832. The Potawatomi Indians agreed over the damming of an Indian creek by local settlers, attacked and murdered 15 men, women, and children of the Indian Creek settlement located on the site. Two of the girls, Rachel, 15, and Sylvia, 19, all were taken hostage for 11 days and later ransomed. The Potawatomi chieftain, Shaboina, warned settlers of an impending attack, but his appeals were ignored. For his role in trying to warn the settlers, Shaboina was thereafter called the white man's friend and given title to a tract of land now known as Shaboina Grove. The massacre at the Indian Creek happened at the same time as Black Hawk and 1,000 Sauk Fox tribesmen, women and children, returned to Illinois, provoking the Black Hawk War and leading to autocracies on both sides. And Rachel and Sylvia Hall, who were taken to Black Hawk's camp, survived captivity and lived to an old age, their lives spared by two members of the Sauk and Fox tribes. Shaboina, an invited guest to the Lincoln-Douglas debate in Ottawa in August 1858. He died in the following year and is buried in Morris, Illinois. There you go. So that's what happens to Shaboina. Okay, we're going to stop this and this. And I got a story for you. And this is, we're just going to go with this one. We haven't had this one yet. Okay, so I got my cool old book. It's Adventures with Indians. And last week I had that story. This week I got Pegasus and Chamberlain. And this is the settling of the Ohio Valley area, the Illinois area. It could have been anywhere in this area, or maybe inhabited. Okay, in New Hampshire, northern area. It's going towards Ohio. Anyway, from last week. So here we go. In old times, whenever war commenced between the English and the French, there goes the French again, in Europe, their colonies in America were involved in its calamities to unknown and fearful extent. And wars were constantly going on in America, in which Indians fought sometimes on the side of the English against the French, and sometimes with the French against the English. It seems that the Indians jumped sides a lot, whoever benefited the most. Some chieftains and tribes were noted for being the firm and faithful friend of the white man, and others were known as their implacable foes. In the month of May 1725, a memorable battle was fought between the English colonists, commanded by Captain Lovewell, and the Pequots, a tribe of Indians who then inhabited the state of New Hampshire. Amongst Lovewell's men was a New Hampshire settler named John Chamberlain. He was one of those rugged spirits who at the time moved the thickly settled country near the coast and penetrated into the wilderness. On his scouting expeditions to surprise the frontier settlers, the Indians passed his rude log home, buried amongst the trees and mountains. Around it were the haunts of wild beasts in the forest. The smoky rafters of his hut were hung with gammons of the bear, and had tumbled with the white pine at the sound of his uttering rifle. And at night he lay on the soft fur of the dun camel. He was tall as a statesman Indian, strong. Two of them were hardly a match for him with their tomahawks against his heavy hatchet. Was he swift of foot? He could outrun a moose in a full trot. He had a great eye, the eye of an eagle. He entrapped the Indian in his ambush and surpassed him in his instinct, which guides alike the savage and the wild beast through the wide and pathless forest. The red man passed cautiously by his dwelling of John Chamberlain. As they watched in ambush for game, they would lie still and suffer him to go on unmolested, even if they were half a score for them, for they feared lest their rifles should miss what they deemed his charmed body, and bring down his vengeance upon them. There is a beautiful lake in New Hampshire, which is called by the Indian name Winnipesaukee. I don't even know if that's right. It is about 28 miles long, 10 miles wide. The country around is hilly and clothed with thick woods. On the shores of the lake, there dwelt a powerful tribe, the Indians called the Pequots. Paragus was their chief. He was a savage of a great strength and stature, swift and cunning and deadly with his rifle and his tomahawk, and cruel and vengeful beyond the wont vengeance of savages. The terror of man, woman, and child along the frontier, and even of the towns that were further removed from the scenes of his violence. Parties of armed men were penetrated through the woods to the shores of Winnipesaukee to discover the retreat of this terrible savage, and if possible, to take him prisoner. But he was too clever and always eluded their search. Once, indeed, they had set his wigwam on fire, and he was hidden so near the spot that he felt the heat of the flames and saw the smoke curling over the tops of the trees under which he lay concealed. In the skirmishes with the Indians, in which Chamberlain was often engaged, he had constantly endeavored to single out Paragus as the foe most worthy of his rifle. Nor was Paragus less willing to encounter the far-famed settler, but they had never chanced to meet. The time, however, was now at hand when one of these mighty men must yield to a superior power or craft of his rival. The colonists, under Captain Lovewell, had marched out in an expedition of meeting Paragus and his men. They had already penetrated the woods to considerable distance and arrived at a place where they expected to find him in the Indians early in the morning on the 7th of May. Whilst at prayers, they heard a gun, and starting up, they immediately prepared for an encounter. But no Indians were in sight, except a hunter, whom Ensign Wyman discovered carrying 2 black ducks in one hand and a gun in the other. There be no probability that he thought of meeting an enemy. So this poor Indian's out there hunting, and he's got 2 ducks, not thinking of meeting a army of colonists, and bad things happen. But no sooner was he seen by the colonists that several guns were fired at him, but missed him. Seeing that certain death was his lot, the Indian resolved to defend himself as long as he could. He leveled his gun at the assailants, and Captain Lovewell was mortally wounded. Whilst at the same moment, Ensign Wyman was taking deliberate aim, killed the poor hunter. The remainder of his day passed without further adventure, though the colonists were in constant apprehension of falling into the snare prepared by the wily Paragus. On the morning of the 8th, Mr. Fry, the chaplain, having assembled the men as usual before they resumed their day's march. You notice they bring a chaplain with them on on a fight. I don't understand that. I mean, why would you bring but anyway, that's a question for another day. Okay, we came out to meet the enemy, he says. We have all along prayed God that we might find them. We had rather give up our lives to Providence, yes, and die for our country, than return home without seeing them and being called cowards for our pains. The chaplain did not pray in vain, for about noon the colonist troops encountered an almost overwhelming body of Indians, who rose from their coverts and nearly encircled them, but seemed loath to begin the fight, for they were no doubt in hopes that the colonists, seeing their numbers, would yield without battle. They therefore made towards them, and their guns presented. They held up ropes which they had provided for securing their captives, and asked them if they would just have quarter. This only encouraged the colonists, who answered, "Only at the muzzles of our guns." And then they rushed towards the Indians, firing as they pressed on, and killing many of them, drove them back several hundred rods. But they soon rallied and fired vigorously at their turn, and obliged the colonists to retreat, leaving several dead and others badly wounded. Lovewell, though mortally wounded in the preceding day, had led his men until this time, but now fell to rise no more. The fighting continued very furiously, and estimating towards night, the Indians roaring and howling like wolves and barking like dogs and making all sorts of hideous noises, as it is their custom, whilst engaged in battle. But before night, they were completely defeated, whilst the loss of the colonists was very great, and amongst others, the worthy chaplain, Jonathan Fry, and he was slain. After the thickest and most desperate of conflict was over, Chamberlain, weary with fighting, thirst and faint with heat, retired to the edge of a lake, since known by the name Lovewell Pond, to drink and wash out his gun, which he had grown so foul and frequent firing that at last he could not make it go off. He pushed his way through the crops of willows to a little beach by the pond, when, behold, from a thicket at the short distance from him appeared a stately figure of Paragus, covered with dust and blood, and making his way likewise to the water. The warriors knew each other at a glance. Chamberlain's gun was useless, and he thought of rushing upon Paragus with his hatchet before he could level his rifle. But the Indian's gun was the same condition as his own, and he too had come to the edge of the pond to quench his thirst. Hastily, sour of his foul gun, the condition of the rifles was instantly seen by the enemies. They agreed to a truce, whilst they washed them out for the encounter. Slowly, with equal movements, they cleaned their guns and took their stations on the beach. Now Paragus cried, "Chamberlain, I'll have you!" And with the quickness and steadiness of an old hunter, he loaded his rifle. No, not me. Have you, replied Paragus, and he handled his gun with a dexterity that made the bold heart of Chamberlain beat faster, whilst he involuntarily raised his eyes and take the last look of the sun. They rammed their cartridges, and each at the same time instant cast his a ramrod upon the sand. "I'll have you, Paragus," shouted Chamberlain again, as he, in this desperation, he almost resolved to fall upon the savage with the butt end of his rifle, lest he should receive his bullets before he could load. Paragus trembled as he applied his powder horn to the priming. Chamberlain's prick ear heard the grains of his powder rattle lightly on the leaves which lay at his feet. Chamberlain struck his gun breech violently upon the ground, and the rifle primed itself. He aimed, and the bullets whistled through the heart of Paragus. He fell, and as he went down, the bullet from the muzzle of his ascending rifle whizzed through Chamberlain's hair and passed off, without avenging the death of its master, into the bordering wilderness. The hunter, after recovering his shock of his sudden and fearful encounter, cast a look upon the fallen savage. The paleness of death had come over his copper-colored forehead. He seized his rifle and bullet pouch and powder horn, and leaving him on the sand, sought again to lessen ranks of the white men, as they wearily defended themselves against the savages. He shouted to them all the fall of Paragus. The Indians looked around them, and the tall figure of their chief now was nowhere to be seen. In grief and despair, they ceased their fire and fell back into the woods, leaving Wyman, Chamberlain, and the small remnants of the band of white men to retrace their way to the distant settlement. The spot on which this fight took place was 50 miles from any white inhabitants. It was almost miraculous that any should have escaped death at the hands of Paragus and his courageous warriors. Those who survived did not leave the battleground till near midnight, and only 14 of them lived to return to their friends. One man, named Solomon Keyes, having received 3 wounds, said he would hide himself and die in a secret place where the Indians could not find him to get his scalp. As he crawled upon the shore of Lovewell Pond, at some distance from the scene of action, he found a canoe into which he rolled himself and was drifted away by the wind. To his great joy and astonishment, he was cast ashore at no great distance from the fort at which Wyman's men shortly after arrived, and gaining strength was soon able to return home. 50 men from New Hampshire were immediately ordered to march to the scene of action, where they found and buried the dead. They found the bodies of only 3 Indians. The rest had undoubtedly been taken away by their comrades, thus terminating the expedition against the Pequots. And although the whites could scarcely claim victory, yet the northern Indians received a blow from which they hardly recovered. Several songs were written upon the subject, but it must be confessed they were much more circumstantial. Okay, well, there you go.
What was more circumstantial?
The confessions of the men were, several songs were written upon the subject, but it was more confessed that they were more circumstantial.
So they might not have been true.
That's true. They were probably over exaggerated.
There you go.
But that was the thing. See, so I mean, what I got out of that whole story was, these people, they're looking to farm just like this picture. Anyway, it boils down to, the warriors. That's what I loved about this story, was the warriors. These are 2 of the most fierce men known to the people there. You know what I'm saying? They were so fierce, and yet they stopped and they said, hey, let's call a truce while we clean our guns, load them, and then we'll fight then. So no matter how bad your enemies are, I guess we have to look at that and say, at that point, couldn't he just look at his enemy and say, you know what? We shouldn't be fighting. We're just like each other. If we can call a truce for a minute or 2, why can't we call a truce for the whole time? Why are we fighting each other? See, that's what I don't get. It's like,
because back then it was me or you.
Yeah.
That's all. We're fighting, and okay, truce till we clean our guns, but then the fight goes back. You know, they just warriors like that. You know, their honor and creed is different from those of us who don't have it.
Yeah.
I just can't see it. I would never be a warrior, you know, because there are certain things I'm sorry, that's just dumb to me, you know?
Yeah. I get it. I get it. That's the thing. It's like, what, you know, we're all one, and then why would some of them want to be, but I can see why the white man was trying to change the Indian. He was trying to take his land, change his way of life, tell him that, you know, that his spirit that he was worshipped. That's what I was talking about in the beginning. The shamans were the priests. They were the interconnection between this world and the next. They were the wise men. They were the healers. They were all these things. And then all of a sudden you got some priests coming in. You know, he shows up on a canoe one day and he says, "Oh, everything you know is wrong. This is the good book and you need to believe in this, you know, right now." And that's that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the point. He had the good book with him.
Yeah.
So that was the power of the priest.
Yeah. So
is that I have the word of God. Where's yours?
Yeah, and they're like, well, everywhere.
Exactly.
You know.
Well, and he's like, no, I got the word of God right here.
Yeah.
It's in this little book.
Where's
and
your
they
book?
look at each other and go, what?
Yeah, I just, you know, see, and that's the thing. So this guy shows up, he looks different, and you know, he carries the word of God. He's got the little cross, and here's these Indians, and they're like, they don't know what to think of that, and you know, my God's better than your God, kind of thing. And if you don't like it, I got 500 troops here. They're going to come and massacre you. I don't know. But anyhow.
Yeah, isn't that strange? My God is stronger than yours.
Yeah.
We're going to come kill your ass, you know.
Yeah.
That's just, you know, good Christian faith. Come on.
Well, see, the Indians' stories were recorded. They were recorded in their crafts and their clothing. They were written on hides, and you know, in some way, those things could be destroyed by the white man real easy. We're going to come in, bust the pottery up. We're going to come in and burn your teepee down. All your history got destroyed in one day because, you know, we took that hide we got of yours and we put it in the fire, and all that information's gone. Now what do you got? Nothing. You know,
and they get to control the narrative.
Yes, exactly.
So when they get back to the white settlement, they tell their version, their story.
Yeah.
So as we have pointed out over the years that we've been doing this, that, you know, so a lot of times we only hear one side of the story.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, it's just, it gets me. That's why I dig into this stuff, and I really want to know. I want to know more, and because I think all of this is created because somebody's trying to hide something. They were, you know, and I don't know if we'll ever get the answers, but they've been trying to hide these things so that we just don't know. You know, we will never find out, or will we?
We'll see at the beginning of that story that it even says that the Indians are like hoping that the colonists will just see their vast numbers and just not want to fight. And instead, who were the savages in that instance in the fight? It was the settlers.
Well, the settlers,
you know, they loaded up their guns and said, "No, we're going to go ahead and fight you guys."
Well,
but the natives were like, "Wait a minute, we were minding our own business here, and you guys decided to start the war. I mean, really?" And so he stated right at the beginning, it wasn't the natives at fault.
Well, and that's true. But did you get some of the other points? They went 50 miles out into the wilderness with this group of, how many men, whatever men, 30, 40 men, whatever it was. And they went out, and remember I read that part about the chaplain saying, we're going to go out here for glory of God, and we're going to come back. And if we Don't we'd rather die than come back non-winning. And they did die. They fought until there was only 14 of them left. I'm thinking, so you guys went out there to fight a giant group of Indians, and with the thoughts of, I might go out here and probably die. Yeah, we're going to go out. I mean, who goes 50 miles from your home to fight Indians? They don't live 50 miles. I mean, 50 miles is a long ways back in the day.
It's a long ways now. I couldn't get 50 miles,
Yes. Yeah, like exactly 50 miles. I don't care what you're doing 50 miles away, man. You can be your Indian and you go hunt your deer and stuff. I just want my little farm here. This is what I think upset the Indians so much. I think this is why they fought back so hard, because here we are, our tribe's right over here, my little village, and we're 50 miles away from you. And you marched for 2 days to get out here, because it's probably a 2-day march to get out there.
At least, or if not 3.
Yeah. And you get out here, you're just a little ways from my home. So we all gather together to fight you. For what reason? I don't get it. It's because what? Next week we're all going to pack up and we're going to move way out to the mountains here, and we need this area.
They went out there to fight them.
Yeah, they went out. They were who's the good guy here? Who is the good guy? I mean, it was I hate to say it, it was Paragus. He was a good chief trying to defend and his people. Here, I want my land, and you come 50 miles out in the middle of nowhere to fight us. I'm going to defend my home.
And want to start trouble, yeah.
Yeah, you come out here, and we just hold up some ropes in our vast numbers and say, just give up, people. We don't know your language. Just surrender. Just surrender.
Now, when was that written?
This book?
This story.
I don't know when that story was actually it was 1764, I think it said.
All right, 1764. Now, I just want to interject.
Stop. 1725. A memorable battle was fought between the English colonists and Captain Lovewell, commanded by Captain Lovewell. 1725.
Okay, now think about how hard it was for the Indians to get guns in 1725.
Yeah. The Indians.
I mean, they're talking about the guns and shooting and everything, but how did 1725, that was a long time ago and hard to get those types of resources. So just saying. So my point to that was, so how many guns would the Indians have had? So there might have been 100 Indians with 5 guns.
Maybe I don't know.
But the colonists, having been colonists, they would have obviously had greater numbers of weapons, like each one of them.
Well, and see,
so if there's 30 guys, they got 30 weapons, whereas the Indians are 100 of them, but they only got 5 guns. Because of how did they get them? And it's 1725. So I just wanted to interject that.
Well,
I don't think every one of the Indians had a gun. Is my point.
I agree, but I think in 1725 the guns aren't that good either. You're not shooting that far, because look at, he says they met on this little beach and he almost hit him with his butt stock of his gun. He was so close. I'm thinking, dude, you guys are like 10 feet away from each other.
That's right.
I'm like, oh my gosh, and you're shooting these guns. You got to remember, these guns didn't travel far. I mean, 100 feet was probably a long distance shot back in the day, which,
oh yeah, and it would have shot 100 feet, but it wouldn't have been accurate.
Yeah, totally. And anyway, a lot to think about there. A lot to think about. Like Xavier says, the thing is that the king was the high priest and he hired mercenaries, professional killers. I agree. the king would have sent out lots of people who were more professional at killing. And of course, we talked about this once before, is how the king knew that if he gave away some free land, people would go out there and homestead. Or if you gave out, hey, you can have that land over for just a few cents, you poor bastard, and you can make your farm and become rich. And with that thought, these people were like, you know what? I could become rich someday. Sure, I'll buy that land. It's only $5. It's like, I have that money. And I go out there. Of course, I got to fight off the Indians. But, they go out and the Indians don't attack you for 2, 3, 4 years. You build a nice little homestead. And then one day you're fighting Indians. And then you get killed off. Or maybe you kill a few Indians before you get killed off. But here's the thing. The king knows that you're going to go out there and do this. And if you, the single colonist, kill 5 Indians and they only kill you, that's 1 loss for the king and 5 loss for the Indians. Right?
Yeah. Which means the next white person is not going to have to fight 5 Indians.
And that's right. And the king didn't have to pay those mercenaries to go fight, because mercenaries charge. The colonists was going to pay to take that land and go fight the Indians for free.
Yeah.
What a scenario. I mean, brilliant.
And one of the things too is the king didn't, if there were only 14 left, he didn't have to pay the others.
Well, but these didn't say these were mercenaries. He says
but I mean, if that were the case in this situation. Yeah. So I mean, if there were 30 and only 14 came back, so then he didn't have to pay half of them.
Yeah, and the king didn't care, because, like, hey,
right.
These were just people. They went out to fight, and so you lost 20 guys, and 14 you came back. Well, okay, good. And then you guys can make some babies, and we'll send 50 more, poor ass people out there to get that land, and they'll fight the Indians too, because you're giving them free land.
Yeah, and something, if you remember some of the stories, the English and the French, they talked about the Huns.
Yeah.
Who were the Huns? Germans.
Yes, they were the
Germanic tribes. The Huns. So the mercenaries a lot of the times were the Huns.
Yes, bred from birth to be warriors, and yeah, amazing. Anyway, let's go. You got a good story tonight. I guess that's a lot. I hope you can, if you enjoyed that, go out and get yourself some books. Study up on the Indians culture. Send me an email. Tell me what you think of the whole thing too. Am I right? Or you got a different idea of what happened? We would love to hear your opinion. There you go.
And also, to sort of wrap up from my standpoint, is that we keep uncovering more information, like the Mayans in Georgia.
Yep.
And, the fact that, where did they go? Well, they moved. So what the information we have now is there's still more information being uncovered. So the truth is, the truth which is being printed now might not be the truth tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because of more information. So my suggestion to all of us is we should take some of this stuff with a grain of salt. It's like, well, this is what they say. And then you and I have talked about this. Well, where'd the food come from? Where did, how did, where did they dig up the dirt? Just all of the stuff that nobody else wants to talk about. But they say, well, the people were here and there must have been 20,000 of them. And there must have been, okay. So we listen to these folks, and as we listen over and over and over again, we get to believe that must have been the way it was. So, but as more information comes out, that's not necessarily true. So y'all listen to these archaeologist type folk with a grain of salt, because they really don't know. They're guessing.
Yes, a lot of it's a guess. So make up your own mind. Do a little research, read some books, and you figure out what you want to believe. Who knows? For all we know, there could have been giants, and they died off, and the Indians took over, and then the Indians died off, and the white man took over, and who knows who's going to take over after we're gone, right?
And the giants were here, so.
That's right. So, what do you got for us tonight? The Coyote and the Prairie Wolf. I like it. This is out of our new book. We did one chapter out of it last week. So this is a new book. Many more stories.
It's American Indian fairy tales. Snowbird, the Water Tiger, etc. by Margaret Compton, 1907. So it's 115 years old. These, the book, the stories, as they were told and then written down. So remember, these stories were told, interpreted by someone, and then Margaret Compton wrote them down. So in some places, as I read them, I can tell that it's like, wait, that's a white person's embellishment versus a Native American. But it's the retelling of the stories, I guess, through a white man's eyes. So, but anyway, this next story in the book is the Coyote or the Prairie Wolf. And the reason it's stated that way is because different tribes looked at the coyote as, different, or whether, because there are a lot of wolf-like characteristics to a coyote, but they're different. So anyway, the beginning, the coyote or prairie wolf. In the beginning, when the K-Rocks lived on the shores of the Klamath River, beyond the desert of the sagebrush and far from the Rocky Mountains, on towards the falling place of the sun, they had many good gifts. Their forests were noble, and their deer were stately and fat. The bear was fierce, but his flesh was sweet and life-giving. And the K-Rocks grew strong by feeding upon it, but they longed for the gift of fire. In the evening, when the beautiful red appeared in the sky, they looked and looked upon it and wished that they might catch just one spark from the faggots in the heavens. All the fire in the world at that time was held by two old hags who lived at the mouth of the river and watched it with jealous care. They also held the key of the dam that kept back the shining salmon. The K-Rocks hated the old women and sought for some way to deceive them so that they might lose the salmon. But most of all, they wanted the precious fire. They lay and shivered under the thick bearskin robes, for the nights were long and cold in their country. And the north wind blew in their faces and cut them sharply with his spears of ice and his arrows of snow. They tried many times to steal the fire. Those rich in wampum offered to buy it, while some who were cunning attempted to wheedle the old hags into giving it to them, but all to no purpose. At last they thought of asking the animals to help them, but who so cunning and so brave as to undertake the task? The bear was too clumsy and growled too much. The elk was too tall, and his antlers would strike against the lodgepole of the wigwam. The dog was not wise, and the serpent was never known to do good to the K-Rocks or to any man. The council sat and smoked, and thought about the matter, and at last decided to ask the coyote, for he was lean and hungry, and might be glad to earn some food. Moreover, he would feel proud to have the K-Rocks ask a favor of him because he had such hard work to get a living. So they went to see the coyote. His home was in the deserts, halfway to the mountains, where he cowered behind the sagebrush, from whence he kept a sharp lookout for blood spilled by the hunter, the flesh that he threw away, or animals small and weak enough for him to be able to capture. The coyote must forever go hungry, for when the animals were let loose upon the earth, and each sprang upon its prey, the mountain sheep, which was given to the coyote, dodged him. And ever since, all coyotes blunder in the chase. The K-Rocks found him sniffing at the ground for the hunter's trail. He felt flattered when he knew that they had come to see him, but he was far too cunning to show it. They explained their errand, but he would not promise to do anything. He took the food that they offered him, some dog's meat, buffalo steaks, and bear's kidney, dainties that the K-Rocks gave to an honored guest. Then he could no longer conceal his pleasure, nor refuse to do what they asked of him. He did not need to hunt that night, so he curled himself up snugly, put his nose under his paws, whisked his tail about to keep his feet warm, and for the first time in his life, he was really comfortable. He soon fell asleep, but not before he had made up his mind that it would be well to do his best for the K-Rocks. It was much better than hunting in the desert. The next morning, he set out early to secure help from other animals, for he could not do the thing alone. The smaller ones did not dare to refuse him, and the larger ones felt sorry for the poor creature and were willing to be of use to him. The coyote placed a frog nearest to the camp of the K-Rocks, then a squirrel, a bat, a bear, and a cougar at certain measured distances, arranged in proportion to their strength and to the roughness of the road. Last of all, a K-Rock was told to hide in the bushes near the hut where the old hags lived. Then the coyote walked slowly up to the door and scratched for admittance. One of the sisters went to see what was wanted, and she let him in. They were surely not afraid of a miserable coyote. He walked wearily to the center of the lodge, where he dropped down as if tired out, and shivered so that he shook the very lodgepole. The two old hags who sat by the fire cooking salmon turned to look at him, and one of them said, "Come up near the fire if you are cold." And she made room for him directly in front of the blaze. He dragged himself to it and lay with his head upon his paws. When he grew uncomfortably warm, he gave two short barks as a signal to the man outside. The old hags thought he barked because he enjoyed the fire. "Ha ha," they said, "wouldn't the K-Rocks like this?" Just then there was a fearful noise of hammering and of stones striking the lodge. The old women rushed out to drive the enemy away. Instantly, the coyote seized a half-burnt stick of wood and fled like a comet down the trail in the forest. The hags pursued him, but when he heard their shrieks, he ran all the faster. Nearer and nearer they came. Now they were almost upon him, and his strength was fast giving out. By a great effort, he flung the brand from him, just as they put out their hands to catch him. The cougar seized it and ran with long bounds down the winding road. The hags followed, but were no match for him, and he had no trouble in handing it over to the bear. The bear was very awkward and dropped it several times from his clumsy paws, so that the old women gained upon him rapidly. And had it not been that the bat seized it and flew high in the air quite unexpectedly, the K-Rocks would never have got the fire. As for the old bear, he rolled over against the tree, exhausted. The bat led the hags a roundabout chase over trees, now flying high, now close to their very heads, until he nearly tired them out. They took courage when they saw the squirrel spring forward to catch the stick that the bat let fall from a great height. "Surely we can catch him," they said, and they gathered their skirts about them and pursued him with furious haste. All this time the brand was burning, and it grew so hot that the squirrel could hardly hold it. But he was a brave little fellow and hopped and jumped steadily on through the woods, though his tail was burnt so badly that it curled up over his back and shoulders. He bears the marks of the singeing to this day. Just as he thought he would have to drop it, he caught sight of the frog. It was such a little piece by this time that the frog could hardly take it from him. But he caught hold of it and ran on. The smoke blinded him and made his eyes smart, besides choking him so that he lost ground and soon heard the hags close to him. He was the last, and only a pond lay between him and the village of the K-Rocks. His heart thumped against his sides, and he dropped the fire in order to take breath before jumping into the water, when the old women pounced upon him. But he was too quick for them. He dodged them, swallowed the brand, and jumped into the lake. They leapt after him, but it was of no use, for they could not swim. So he got away, and they had to turn back and go to their hut at the mouth of the river. The K-Rocks were waiting on the edge of the pond, and when the frog crossed, they welcomed him with shouts of joy. But where was the fire? He lost no time in showing them, for he spat out the sparks upon some faggots, and they quickly caught alight. But the frog lost his tail, and it never grew again. Tadpoles still wear tails, but when they become full-grown frogs, they cast them off out of respect to their brave ancestor, who is king of all the animals that inhabit the bogs and marshes and the marshes of the Klamath country. After his success in getting the fire, the coyote was a great favorite with the K-Rocks and dined off the choicest bits that were brought into the camp. They were not satisfied even now that they had roasted meat and corn, but must need coax the coyote to go and get the salmon. They explained to him that the big, shining fish were all in a great dam at the mouth of the river, and that the old hags from whom he'd stolen the fire, they kept the key. The coyote was willing, but he said, "Wait a little till my coat changes, so that the hags will not know me." So they waited till his coat grew thin and light in color, and then, when he was ready, accompanied him with song and shouting to the edge of the village. He went down the Klamath many days' journey, until he reached the mouth of the river, where he saw the old hag's lodge. He rapped at the door. They were asleep by the fire, but one of them, being roused by the noise, growled, "Come in." Instead of hanging his head, drooping his tail, and looking weary, as he had done when he went to steal the fire, the coyote held up his head, frisked his tail, and grinned at them. He was of too much greater importance now, and he was sleek and round from being well fed, so the hags did not know him. They cooked salmon, but offered him none. He said nothing, for he was not hungry, having dined off of food that the K-Rocks had prepared for him. "Ha!" he thought, "I shall soon have all the salmon I want from the K-Rocks." The next morning he pretended to be asleep. When the elder sister rose and went to the cupboard to get the key of the dam, she was going for salmon for breakfast. When she had left the lodge, he stretched himself lazily and walked slowly towards the door. Once outside, he ran after the old woman and flung himself between her feet, so that she fell down, and in doing so, dropped the key. He seized it, went to the dam, and unlocked it. The green water, shining with silvery salmon, rushed through it so fast that it broke not only the lock, but the dam itself. And thereafter, the K-Rocks had all the salmon that they wanted. The coyote grew proud over his success and was not satisfied with the kindness and honor showed to him by the K-Rocks. He wanted to dance through heaven. He chose a bright blue star for a partner and called out to her night after night to dance with him. At last she grew tired of his howling. So one night she told him to go to the highest point of the cliff, and she would reach down far enough for him to dance with her. He had fine sport for a while, but as she lifted him higher and higher, he began to feel cold, until his paws became numb and slipped from his partner's wrist, and he fell into the great chasm that is between the sky and the earth at the edge of the world. He went down, down, until every bit of him was lost, for coyotes could not be permitted to dance with stars. The end.
That was a good one.
Now, you know, we've heard a story not too long ago of how, was it coyote or dog that ended up with the firebrand in his ear, and he kept running and running and running and tossed it out, and they had fire?
Yeah.
So, you know, this is a different set of natives in a different part of the country, and they still have a similar story.
Yeah. Yeah. That's for sure. Oh, yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
But nobody got beheaded.
Not
Nobody
this
actually
time.
got killed, so
I,
you know.
I do like the stories of Coyote. Coyote stories are pretty cool.
And there are a bunch of them.
Yes, Coyote
Coyote is one of the favorites among all the different tribes. They love coyote stories, and I literally think they make up coyote stories just because they like coyote.
Yeah, well, he fits almost all the genres. All the stories. He's wily character. He's kind of funny. He does tricky things. He's real smart. And he most of the time he ends up on the good side, unless he gets disintegrated like this last story. But he got to dance with the stars for a little bit.
Yeah, but he couldn't go with them and stay with them. But yeah. And old Wile E. Coyote, I always wondered, he must have had an unlimited credit card to get all that stuff from Acme.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It was all defective. Always blew up in his face. Oh, geez, yeah. He'd order that stuff, and it's like all of a sudden he tears open this big box, and here's a rocket launcher. Here's some weird thing you wouldn't think of, and roller skates with rockets on them, so he could run as fast as Roadrunner. I remember that. Oh, I'm
rocket skates.
I'm gonna a wall here with a road. And when he hits that wall, you could, it didn't even need words, but you could see when he hits that wall, he's going to smash into it. I'll catch him. And then he goes beep, beep, and runs through the wall and down the road. And then, if he can do it, I can do it. And then he runs in and hits the wall. There he is. It's like, oh, man, learn from your mistakes. Anyway,
I'm on a straight road for miles and miles and miles, and then there's a curve.
Yeah.
Having been in Nevada and driven down through the state, there's a road that goes on for miles and miles and miles, and then there's a curve.
Yeah.
But anyway, so while we were yapping earlier, I picked cards.
Yes, what do you got?
And so it's an interesting spread. And I promise you, I shuffled and pulled the card and shuffled some more and turned them and shuffled some more. And I came up with these 4. 3 upright and 1 upside down. Frog, deer, rabbit, and hummingbird. And so when I picked up the book opened to the page that frog's on. So, that's all kind of weird. But anyway, so
bird or hummingbird?
Huh?
Bird or hummingbird?
Hummingbird is the last one.
Oh.
So frog is about cleansing. And so frog sings the songs that bring the rain and make the dirt road more bearable. Water prepares and cleanses the body for sacred ceremony. It is the element we understand best in the womb. Frog, like ourselves, is a polywog in the fetal waters and only learns to hop after it experiences the world of fluidity. Now, an interesting thing, and I'm just a parallel or maybe not, and, listening to the DNC today stuff, they're all about the abortion. They all want to take the polywogs out. So for some reason, I was like, frogs, polywogs, wow, that's a interesting thing. But anyway, so the transformation into adulthood prepares frog for its power to call the waters from the skies. When the ponds are dry, frog calls out to the thunder beings to cleanse and replenish the earth with water. If frog hop into your cards today, its ribbit may be calling in the cleansing you need. If you were to look at where you are today, would you use any of the following words to describe your condition? Tired, overloaded, harried, frustrated, guilty, itchy, nervous, at times at a loss, empty, or weakened? If so, take a break and allow yourself to bathe in frog medicine. This could mean a long bath, disconnecting the phone, yelling stop, or to take in deep cleansing breaths to give yourself better energy. The key thought is to find a way to rid yourself of distraction. And we're all being distracted a lot nowadays. And to replace the mud with clear energy. Frog speaks of new life and harmony through its rain song. The deep tones of frog's ribbit are said to be the call of the thunder beings, thunder, lightning, and rain. The ribbit is the heartbeat that comes into harmony with Father Sky and calls for the replenishment that is needed. Call the frog and find peace in the joy of taking time to give to yourself. Next card up is deer. And deer is innocence, and I can paraphrase deer so easy in that, you know, this lovely thing. Oh, and by the way, about a week ago, right outside my door were two deer. One, a young fawn, still had its spots, and the other one was the yearling, a doe, that was standing beside her, right out my back door here. I mean, right out my back door. So, you know, I am blessed with, you know, I usually see them often along the edge of the field or in the woods, but the back door. So deer is gentleness. So now frog's just telling us we need to sort of clean up our act. But to clean up our act, to re-energize. So, and deer is gentleness. Now, the basic premise of this story is that deer was on her way to Sacred Mountain to have a chat with the Great Spirit. And on the road up the mountain, there's a demon, the worst and nastiest ever made. And deer goes up and says, hi, I want to go on by. And the demon's trying to scare the deer, and the deer is just not having it. And through the innocence of the deer, it melted the demon's heart to the size of a walnut. And deer just walked on up to Sacred Mountain. So the moral of the story is, through the gentleness of deer, that the road to Sacred Mountain is always open. So, you know, there are many people, I talk about, you know, staying connected with the spirit all the time. Well, here's the thing. Deer shows up in the cards and tries to remind us always that the path to Sacred Mountain is always open. And so we may need a cleansing before we get there, but deer shows up to remind us always that pathway is always open. Deer teaches us to use the power of gentleness to touch the hearts and minds of wounded beings who are trying to keep us from Sacred Mountain. Like the dappling of fawn's coat, both the light and the dark may be loved to create gentleness and safety for those who are seeking peace. Now, we're all seeking peace, most of us anyway. Mostly most of us. Now, the next one up is rabbit. And rabbit's about fear. And, oh, I had turned right to the page and passed it by. Rabbit is fear. A long time ago, Rabbit had a friend who was sort of like a witch, a sorceress of sorts. And they became friends and traveled around a lot. And one day, Rabbit said, "I'm hungry." And Eyewalker said, "Okay," and touched this rock and turned it into a turnip and said, "Here." And then they went on down the road a little ways, and Rabbit, wanted something and tapped another thing. And here you go, Rabbit. So Rabbit fell down and rolled all the way to the bottom of the hill. And Eyewalker, the spirit, the witch being, cured Rabbit. And so a few days went by, and Rabbit was nowhere to be seen. And Eyewalker was like, "Wonder what's up with Rabbit." And when finally Eyewalker bumped into Rabbit, she was like, "What's going on here?" And Rabbit said, "I don't want to have anything to do with you." And Eyewalker was very distraught, cried, wept. And when she asked why, Rabbit said, "I'm afraid of you." So from that day forward, Rabbit was cursed with fear. So that anytime Rabbit is there, Rabbit says that, "Eagle, I am here. I am so afraid of you." Rabbit calls fear to itself. If Eagle doesn't hear, Rabbit calls louder. Rabbit calls bobcats and wolves and coyotes and even snakes until they come. As the story shows, rabbit medicine people are so afraid of tragedy, illness, and disaster and being taken that they call those very fears to themselves. So here is the lesson. If you pulled Rabbit, stop talking about horrible things that may be happening to you and get rid of "what if" in your vocabulary. This card may signal a time of worry about the future or trying to exercise your control over that which is not yet in form. So we're all worrying about the future, wondering how it's going to be, wondering what's going to manifest. We don't know yet. So why are we worrying? So, and the last card is Hummingbird, number 44, upside down. And the last one in the book, Hummingbird is joy, but it's upside down. If Contrary Hummingbird is in your cards in any configuration, it speaks to you of matters of the heart. Interesting, I had a heart stress test today. How or why has your heart center closed? Have you done something callous to another, causing them to shut off the love they once felt for you? The Contrary Hummingbird may presage sorrow and the inability to see the many blessings we two-leggeds have been given and the primordial beauty that surrounds us. Now, I'm always talking about, accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, and the wisdom from the Creator. In this, Rabbit is saying, quit calling in the fear. Frog says right off the bat, you need to cleanse ourselves and get rid of whatever it may be. Remember, through gentleness and innocence, the road to the Creator is always open. Quit being afraid, like the rabbit, And hummingbird is like, you know, quit looking at, worrying about what the future is going to be. Quit being sad. Oh, if the contrary hummingbird sings its song, perhaps you should journey into your personal pain and know that your sorrow is your joy in another direction. So folks are having sorrow right now. What about the future and who's going to do? And yeah, we're all going through it. But the more we go through it, all we're doing is living in sorrow, and we're creating pain for ourselves. Wash it away with the frog's message and learn that in the sorrow, in that pain, it's joy in another direction. Interesting. So those are the cards for tonight.
Very good. I like hummingbird.
Yeah, and I always love deer. And remember that I keep bringing it up, because the card keeps coming up. And it bears repeating. The road to Sacred Mountain is open.
Right.
We don't have to fight a monster to get there. It's open.
That's right.
But do you believe it,
Yep.
And I promise I shuffled the cards.
Oh, so it's a very good card. Good card. I agree. Good card. Very good card. You got a show tonight?
Maybe. I'm really tired.
Okay. And in the house, we got Joanne dancing gypsy. Your brain has a switch. You control it. Practice. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Your brain has a switch. You control it. Practice. Absolutely. More people did that. The place we're in right now. Anyway, Seeker of Truth, thank you for coming. She says, I like pears, one of my favorite fruits. Well, good for you. Richard the Red is here. He likes pears and nectarines. Let's see. Mary Wins is in the house. Thank you, Mary, for joining us. Elderberry, F. Kitty, and all those ones who have left us because we got too tired. Thank you, everybody. Jargo Smith, thank you for being here. Appreciate each and every one of you. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Don't forget to go over to Nina the Mystic on her merch store. Link is in the description below, and get yourself one of these wonderful Milky Way Soul Tribe shirts and support the Milky Way. And you too can wear my smile face on your chest. Anyway, thank you, everybody. A commentator, Mossy Man, Xavier. Thank you, Xavier. You're new. I appreciate you being here. Very good wisdom from him tonight. I think he gets the gold star. Saturnian's son, Chloe. She had still some more painting to do. So anyway, thank you, everybody. Great night. Thank you most David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers, for being my co-host for 140 episodes. Ain't that something?
That's a bunch, ain't it? Yeah.
140 episodes. Okay, night,
So
everybody.
Blessings to all of our folks who are here tonight and may watch this. We love you all, we do, and thank you for hanging out with us. So cheers, and thank you, Robert, as always.
Lucky Stone is in the house. Yes. It's Indiana Jones on a t-shirt. I love it. Yes, I'm Indiana Jones, and here we go. So join me for some great adventures. Check out my stuff on Instagram. I went to the zoo and I posted some zoo videos, so it's kind of cool. There's bear on there, and I just posted a badger one and the monkeys, and it's kind of cool. Join me over on Instagram. Become a follower over there. Some cool stuff. Yep, merch is only available to the end of the month, as Lucky's saying, and that's absolutely right. After that, all these shirts will become collector's items and no more, and we will have to start over. Anyway, with that, remember, go out and be the best person that you can. Things are the way they are, and who knows what's going to happen. This could be the best day of the rest of your life. So you never know what tomorrow brings. So live life like you've never lived it before.
And simple things go a long way.
They do.
Simple things go a long way.
They do. Simple things. And like I said, be nice to your neighbor. Be nice to yourself. Do something for somebody. It will make you feel good. And with that, everybody, remember the most important lesson that we learn around here, and that is be the frequency you want to receive, everyone. Love y'all. Peace, everybody.
Cheers.